Chapter 20, Finding Their Swing. On that first day out with the new crew, Joe rowed as if he'd never been able to row before. He rowed as Pocock had told him to row, giving himself up to the crew's effort entirely, merging with it, becoming one with it. He followed Hume's stroke flawlessly, sending it back to Shorty behind him in one continuous flow. It felt to Joe like a transformation, as if some kind of magic had come over him. As he climbed out of the boat, he realized that he didn't need to struggle to give himself up to the rhythm of the boat, as Pocock had urged him to do. With the bunch of boys, he did not even have to try. He just trusted them. In the end, it was that simple. Over the next few days, the boat began to fly, just as Stubbs said it would. Racing the other crews, the boat won by an astonishing 7 lengths one day, 3 lengths another day. They won sprints. They won in the wind. They won in snow. And on March 28th, Ulrichsen officially declared that they were the new varsity boat. If he was going to get to the Olympics, this was the crew that was going to take him there. That afternoon, George Pocock personally christened the new shell in which the boys would row. As Joe and his crewmates had held it aloft, Pocock poured in a jarful of mysterious fluid over its bows and pronounced, "I christen this boat Husky Clipper. May it have success in all the waters it speeds over, especially in Berlin." As the boys began to carry the boat down the ramp to the water, some of them crinkled their noses, trying to make out the odd scent of the fluid on the bow. Pocock chuckled and grinned. "Sarcot juice," he said, "to get it to use Germany." 2 weeks before the Pacific Coast Regatta, Ulrichsen held one final 3-mile time trial. The course record was then 16:33.4, but Joe and his crewmates finished it faster at 16:20. And they did it sitting upright at the end of the race, breathing easy, feeling good. Every time they climbed into the Husky Clipper together, they just seemed to get better. There was a straightforward reason for what was happening. The boys in the Husky Clipper were all tough, they were all skilled, and they were all fiercely determined. But they were also all good-hearted. Every one of them had come from humble origins or had been humbled by the hard demands of rowing. Life and challenges that they had faced together had also taught them the humility, that there were limits to their individual powers, that they had learned that there were things they could do far better together than alone. They were starting to row now for one another, not just themselves, and it made all the difference. Kai Ebright and the boys from Cal arrived in Seattle on April 14th. The next day, when they showed up to row, the sun was out in full force and the water was glass smooth. As they carried their shells down the ramp to the water, the national champion Cal boys were an intimidating sight. They had been rowing well under the California sun, and they were tanned and fit. A week earlier, they had rowed a 3-mile time trial in 16:15, a good 5 seconds better than Ulrichsen's crew. But Ebright knew to take the Washington boys seriously. That first day, he jumped into the coxswain's seat of his varsity boat, and Pocock crafted shell called the California Clipper and barked commands himself during an 8-mile practice row. On race day, Saturday, April 18th, the skies were flawlessly blue, the weather was warm, and a ferry packed with students and the school's marching band left the dock in the early afternoon. A Navy cruiser and nearly 400 other vessels flying purple and gold pennants gathered near the finish line. On the dock at Fred's house, right next to Harry's new home, Joyce and the kids and Harry sat eating peanuts and tossing the shells into the lake. By 2:15 p.m., when an observation train rolled into place, the largest crowd ever to witness a crew race in Northwest and assembled along the race course. The Washington freshmen did not disappoint, setting a new course record and winning by 4.5 lengths. In the next race, Washington's JV boat took the lead easily at the start and crossed the line almost 6 lengths ahead of California, again setting a new course record. At 4:15 p.m., the 2 varsity crews paddled out to the starting line. A tailwind had stiffened, piling through rough water into heaps of white caps at the north end of the lake. So far, all the boats on the course that day had broken course records, even the losing crews. The bodies of the oarsmen were catching the wind, acting as sails hurrying the shells down the course. At the starting line, the Husky Clipper bobbed in the swells. Roger Morris and Gordy Adam up front kept the bow of the boat pointed due north. Bobby Moak lowered his hand to indicate his crew was ready to row. Over in Cal's boat, the coxswain did the same. The starter shouted, "Row," and the boats bolted off the line. The big Cal stroke, Gene Birkenkamp, who had moved Washington down in 2 races the previous year, quickly powered his crew to a short lead. For 3/4 of a mile, the two crews rowed at the same speed, both furiously digging at the choppy water. Don Hume was matching Birkenkamp's stroke rate, but making no progress in overtaking him. Then Bobby Moak had a daring idea. Cal was ahead and rowing hard, but he told Hume to lower the stroke count. Hume dropped it to 29. Almost immediately, the boys found their swing. Don Hume set the model, taking huge, smooth, deep pulls. Joe and the rest of the boys fell in behind him. Very slowly, seat by seat, the Husky Clipper began to regain water on the California Clipper. By the 1-mile mark, the two boats were even. The Cal coxswain called out, "Give me 10 big ones." Bobby Mock hunched down in the stern, looked Don Hume in the eyes, and growled at him to keep steady at 29. With the wind in their faces pushing them along, both crews were flying down the course now. Spray was breaking over the bow of their shells as they skipped from wave to wave. Cal was rowing at 31 strokes per minute, but even with its slower rates, Washington continued to inch ahead. The Cal coxswain called for another Big Ten, but Bobby Mock held steady and Washington maintained its small lead. In Washington's number 7 seat, Joe realized he was nearing his father's house. He was tempted to sneak a peek over his shoulder, but he didn't. He kept his mind in the boat. Washington moved out to a 3/4 length lead. The Cal coxswain called on his boys to give him more. They raised their stroke rate to 35, then 36. Mock continued to hold steady at 29. Finally, with a half a mile to go, Mock bellowed at Hume to pick up Washington's rate. The Husky Clipper surged forward, and in the last half mile, they accelerated in a way that no shell had ever accelerated on Lake Washington. As they flew down the last few hundred yards, the boys rocked back and forth perfectly in sync. Hundreds of boats whistled, shrieked. The locomotive on the observation train wailed. Students on the ferry screamed, and a long, sustained roar went up from tens of thousands standing along the beach as the Husky Clippers crossed the line 3 lengths ahead of California, beating the course record by 37 seconds. As the crowds around him cheered, Al Ulbrichsen sat quietly in his boat at the finish line, listening to the band play the school's fight song. His boys had beaten a very good California crew, the defending national champions. They had rowed better than ever. They were truly out of the ordinary group, but it was too early to see whether the magic would hold. 2 years running now, his varsity had beaten E-Brights in the Pacific Coast Regatta, only to lose at the national championships in Poughkeepsie. Who is to say that this bunch wouldn't do the same?